Hi, Toby. How are
Hi,
you?
uh,
Yeah. Congratulations on the show. What was it? What does it feel like joining a cast that's been together this long as a newcomer?
well, it is always slightly intimidating when yeah,
Mm.
I mean, everybody knows each other. You're the new guy, but they were so welcoming, and I kind of knew Stephen and Deborah, and I knew a few of them, so it wasn't like they were complete strangers to me, and they were incredibly welcoming, and yeah, I it was a ball, really.
Yeah, I was talking to the other members of the cast about taking the show to the sort of warmer climes and in a great tradition of the Christmas special, British Christmas special. Um, I know that it was done deliberately and or slightly sort of tongue in cheek, but what's that dynamic like in taking the story that's usually set in London abroad? Is it more?
Well, it can only be positive. I mean, you're not in a, you're not, you don't have a location in Croydon or something like that in the rain and the kind of, grey. It's sunshine. It was lovely, and yeah, I mean, I think it's really nice, but I think it also is. It makes sense at that time of year. You really, and especially at the moment, I think things seem quite sort of dingy and dark in many ways, and it's quite nice to have something that's uplifting and
Yeah.
in the summertime.
Let's talk about Archie's character and like what is it about him that made you feel like you could play him and that you would be doing him justice?
I think, well, I really like the way he's portrayed. I think he's a nice guy. I think he's a decent guy, and I think the themes that Abby is talking about in the drama between, particularly between Hannah and Archie, of these two people of a certain age, in their 50s, having to find love again, and having the difficulty at that age of having to commit to somebody again, to commit to that intimacy, both physically and mentally, that intimacy, and the fear of that, and also entering into that, the next stage of life, where Archie has been a single parent for a long time, and now his son has left, and he's on his own, and it's not necessarily the fear of being on his own. It's just that, how do I define myself now, and what is the next stage of my life? And I think he's tried, it seems, before, to find somebody, but it hasn't worked. And finally, he's found somebody that he feels compatible with.
Yeah, I think we have Abby to thank for her representation of not only women but also women over the age of 40 in these kind of how important is it for you to sort of be part of a production that really values people of well, I don't want to say of a certain age, but middle class people living normal lives and loving again instead of being portrayed just as the mum or the dad or
Yeah, no, I think it's really important. I think it is really important. I think, and to I think it's really important to show women of that age group and represent them honestly, and to give them a proper, to talk about their lives in a kind of granular way, rather than this sort of superficial gloss, which is, oh, they're the mum, or they're sort of in the background. And I think also for guys as well, to give them an honest, to talk about it honestly, rather than, again, this sort of gloss that is done in a lot of dramas. I mean, I think there are more guy roles, but it's lovely to have a drama which is really about the women. I mean, they are at the forefront of this, and I think it's really important.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we often get like people congratulated, writers congratulated for making the female lead more age appropriate for the male lead, and usually you get like there's already a 10-year sort of he's
Yeah.
already a 10-year her junior. I think it's nice that you guys are of a very similar age. Was that important for you to sort of
Yeah.
think
Well,
about?
I mean, I think the thing is that the reason I wanted, really, honestly, the reason I wanted to do it was because it was talking about that. And when Abby discussed it with me, it was like, it's really about, you know, 250 somethings finding one another after, for Archie, his wife has left him. And for her, she's been through these romance, she's divorced, and then this romance that didn't work out. And so they're both kind of at this very, they're both very vulnerable, at a very vulnerable place in their lives. And she talks about it very honestly, about how difficult it must be at that age to enter into this modern dating kind of thing of apps and all of that stuff, meeting people on whatever it is, Hinge, or and having to start again, having to start again, and how when you find somebody that you're compatible with, it must be such a kind of and that's, I suppose, at the heart of their story. That's what's going on, and through the various convolutions of the plot, they earn that, at the end, they've earned it, and I kind of feel that when I was, and I'm sure when you were younger and you were going into the beginning dating, the whole kind of idea of going up and asking somebody for their number or asking somebody out, or whether, it was such a kind of like, you really had to kind of, it was a commitment to do that, because you'd go through all of it. What if they don't give me their number? What if they don't like me? So by the time you'd actually met up with them, you'd already gone through all of that. So you've earned it. Whereas now, I think just, it just seems weird to me conceptually. Like, you're just swiping along and then you're meeting someone and you don't know really who they are. And it sort of seems such a strange transactional thing.
Yeah, it just feels that everything is too much at hand nowadays. It's
Yeah.
everything like it's gratification, instant
Yeah.
gratification, and I think that it could be actually a bad thing. I just want to go back to the show and just talk about the international. I know you're someone who's been on several sets with international actors, so you've been there before. What was it like to work with the Spanish sort of half of the cast?
It's lovely. I mean, it's great because you're there and you go. It makes sense of it all. I mean, if we were just in Barcelona and it was just a bunch of English actors, yeah, I don't know, it just wouldn't seem appropriate. It's really great that we have like people, Spanish actors who are working with us. It was lovely, and they were all really good.
Yeah. I spoke to Abby about perhaps bringing the show back for a full series, full season, as we say now. Would you join if you were asked?
Yeah, I mean, as long as it kind of they make sense of how would Archie fit into this whole world, and how would that work? I mean, of course. I mean, it was such fun doing it, and I loved working with Nicola. So yeah, and Abby's writing is great. So yeah.
Brilliant. And what was it like? I mean, you've just mentioned Nicola there. What was it like working with her? Was it a lot of fun? Were there several retakes? And because there is like quite a bit of sort of humor and comedy in this as well, on top of sort of more serious things
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah, she's great, and I think what's lovely is to see that she is really she is the character. I mean, Abby. I think they it's such a symbiotic relationship. I think Abby writes for her, and vice versa. It's a lovely thing, and so it was lovely working with somebody who just was there, was very present, and it's yeah, and she's very playful with it, and we got loads of takes, and she did it, and you know, and she really plays with you, you know, which is fun.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time, and thanks and congratulations again.
A pleasure.
I really adored that character.
Oh, good. It's lovely to meet you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey you guys!
Hey, that's what they all say.
Hey you guys!
Hey!